What is the worst case of helicopter parenting you have seen? I work in a college. We get helicopter parents constantly. I think my favorite example was a mother who called every day, telling us how to do our jobs, and listing off Rolodexes of complaints for things, including how we don't treat the students like adults and coddle them. In the same breath she was asking me to divulge information regarding her son's healthcare and information with the college, and refused to let him speak to me himself because he was only a kid and she would handle it. Man-child was fired and his mom called to complain to the operations manager about being unfair. She even complained to the VP North America of large company about the manager being unfair. Backstory: man-child was hired because he lived next door to the VP North America, now president of a fairly large international company. Did whatever he wanted at work because everyone was afraid of firing him. My boss sacrificed a small contract to get rid of the guy. Man-child mucked it up, and there was no room with some of the other local projects, so he was sent back to the regional offices. Man-child decided to not show up to work for a week so he could play a new release of Call of Duty MW. Operations manager told him he better have an excuse, and man-child provided a note from his mom. Man-child was fired. Mom decided to BCH out the manager, accusing him of unfairly targeting her son. Last I heard of this was at the yearly Christmas party conference where the VP went up to the operations manager asking him why he fired him. I was a soccer referee as a tween and teenager. At first I only worked the U6 and U8 games. Yes, they used refs for those brackets in my sock, though they didn't use lines people. One blustery November day, I was working a U8 game. The wind was so loud I couldn't hear well, and neither the patter of rain nor the murmur of the crowd helped. One of the kids behind me tripped and fell. He cried, but in a whimpery sobbing way that didn't travel in that wind. None of the players saw. None of the coaches saw. And I didn't see. This kid's dad was furious and ran out on the field screaming. I heard him as he got within a couple yards and turned in time for him to shove me to the ground, standing over me screaming. I was 12. I complained to the league ref coordinator, but nothing ever came of it that I know of. At least if he was a Steeler, he'd get a 15-yard flag and then wouldn't be allowed back the next week. Kid came to swim team tryouts, was having a meltdown and refused to get in the water. Mum got in the pool fully clothed to try and coax kid into the pool. I just don't understand how a grown person can think this is okay. Just reading this makes me embarrassed for the lady. My girlfriend's mother. My girlfriend is 22 in a few months. She keeps track of my GF's bank account and credit card purchases. She also keeps track of my GF's cell phone call logs and asks her why she's having long phone calls with this phone number, which is obviously mine. I guess it doesn't help that my girlfriend and I have been secretly dating for about a year and a half. I'm 20 and my parents attempt this. My dad created my credit card though, but thankfully he insists that I use cash and so he can't see what I actually buy. I think I use too many minutes he'd ask what I was doing too. I've worked IT at a few universities. My favorite call was a mom calling and bitching about not being able to see her 26-year-old graduate student's grades. I was a non-traditional, older student when I went to college. 24 in freshman year. Not super old, but old enough. I wanted to do the whole thing. I got stuck in a dorm. Forced into a triple. Okay, I'm trying out college. I'll move to an apartment the following year. Nope. A mom of one of the other students called the admissions office to complain, saying that I'd buy her kid beer I didn't drink. At the time, I ended up getting to move out into an on-campus apartment because of her. The best part was, I was going to work when they were moving in and she was all proud of the fact that she had me thrown out of the dorm. The kid was embarrassed. I was like, oh, thanks, I'm sorry but I have to go to work. She looked a little sheepish at that point. I'm 18. My parents make me have an app that tracks location and speed in vehicles and such. I'm also in college about 3 hours away from home. One night at around 8 PM I decided I was going to go get some pictures at the lake literally across the street from campus. Less than a 2-minute walk. The second my foot hits the other side of the street I get a text from my mom asking me what I'm doing. Stuff like this happens all the time. Cool, so not weird at all to know that you were watching my location at that exact moment. Things like this are the reason I have really bad anxiety, so now I just spoof my location 24/7 because it's really unnecessary to ask me where I'm going or what I'm doing every time I leave my room. One time in high school band we were supposed to travel up north to play in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Naturally, we were going to stay a few nights in a hotel, with 4 people per room. My mom had the bright idea to come with me and stay in the same room with me and 2 other 16-17-year-old boys. Thankfully my dad talked her out of it, but she still insisted that I text her every day of the trip. My brother was injured in a training accident in the Israeli army. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was a pretty messy injury that needed immediate care. For some reason the base commander tried to hide the injury and refused to send my brother to the hospital. Instead he sent him to the camp medic, who took one look at my brother and said, "Here, have some morphine and holy god, I'm going to call for help." My brother asked him to call my mom. My mom, a military police colonel at the time, commandeered a helicopter along with a squad of MPs. She then flew up into Lebanon where my brother was based, landed in the middle of his base, ordered her way into the medical tent while setting the MPs outside as guards, loaded my brother into the chopper and evacuated him out. To be fair, she's a great mom who usually lets us fail on our own. But you asked for helicopter parenting examples and it doesn't get more helicopter parent than actually commandeering a helicopter to go take care of your son. That is epic. Sounds like a bad butt mom. My ex-boyfriend's mother was so controlling of her own son that she eventually wanted to control me. She told me to quit my part-time job because I am a woman and it's dangerous out there, stop pursuing music and go to graduate school with her son. During dinner she sat me down and told me to choose between work or family and waited for my answer. I was 23, he was 25, dated for 7 months. I took the ACT this December for my second time. I'd made a 30 last time and I wanted to see if I could improve or not. So I'm standing in line waiting to be checked in and I see this lady looking to be about 35 come in and she has this rolling suitcase saying, "It's okay to be a little crazy." I didn't know how true that saying was at the time. I thought she was one of the testing people who like supervise and hand the tests out. No, she was not. She came with her, I'm guessing, middle school or freshman child who wore a hoodie the whole time and didn't bring a pencil to the test, who looked very young to take this test. We are all in line and she starts cutting in line so her boy could be up ahead, saying it was his first time, cut her a break and she was an adult, etc. She kept on moving up the line till she got to these big black football players. They had their school's Letterman jacket on and stayed where she was, getting glares from the rest of the line. I get in the classroom, we take it at the community college in town, and I look out the door to see the lady arguing with the test ladies, saying she has every right to be in there with her son to make sure he is alright and she would call the ACT company blah blah blah. They won't let her in. She decides to sit outside for the 4-hour test and wait for him. She brought blankets and snacks and during the break she kept telling everyone how her smart boy was taking the ACT for the first time and how he was gonna score higher than all of us. This lady added more confusion to this already confusing day. I work at a higher education academic institution and let me tell you, I've seen some crap. What stands out for me is that we regularly, 3-5 times a year, have parents who want to attend sit in the back of a class in which their adult child attends. Oxymoron. B. Want full access to their adult child's academic records, homework, schoolwork, teacher contact info, etc. C. Want all school correspondence and communication of their adult children to be routed through them. All of this is generally covered by FERPA or, in the case of a board policy. My mother got me kicked out of the army after learning I was going into a role where I might see combat. Cavalry Scout, 19D. She contacted 2 senators, worked her way through the chain of command until she got to my CO and apparently pee off my CO to the point where I received special attention. I spent 3 months in the reception battalion. First stop before boot camp, in a loss vest. Line of sight was pink with reflective tape and generally reserved for flight risks and suicidal people. After a 15-minute visit with one of the psychologists, I was deemed to have major depressive disorder and received an entry-level separation discharge. On the last day, my CO went through my paperwork, Found my DD-214 and ripped it up so I couldn't re-enter the military. I come from a family who served continuously in the military for 5 generations until me. I was 18 at the time. Bonus. My graduation date had I successfully completed boot camp was the 13th of September, 2001. I understand her worry, but she went way overboard. On more than one occasion I've told moms, sorry to be sexist, but it's never been dads in my experience, that they're going to need to wait in the lobby while I interview their child for the job. If your kid is 18, they're legally an adult and therefore you have no right whatsoever to be present in that interview. 30% of moms would try to intimidate me as if I were their child or husband, but would back down when they saw I didn't care. 60% threw temper tantrums that cost their child the job. 10% tried to have me fired. I feel like you have amazing stories from among those 10%. My mom has to know what I'm doing and where I'm going to be and what time things are happening every time I go out with friends. I'm 25. My friend is 29 and never moved out. She has to tell her parents where she's going. She's not allowed to drive too far, and she still has 10 PM curfew. She had a boyfriend for a while, but she was only allowed to have him over to the house. So he broke up with her because it's like dating a teenager. If she wants to go out to bar, she has to lie and say she's sleeping over at a friend's place. Tales from the classroom. 1. That time a parent argued with me when their child cheated because I didn't specifically say that copying homework was cheating. 2. That time the parent clearly wrote the entire essay for her child. Parents, let your kids fail and learn. Worked with a woman whose 4-year-old loved airplanes. There was a big air show coming to the area, and I asked her if she was taking her son to the air show, as he would probably love it. She said she was worried they were too dangerous, and a plane could crash into the crowd, so they didn't go. Great parenting. Rob your child of an incredible experience because you have an irrational fear. Seems like more of a bad case of fixed wing parenting. A woman in my church was the mother of a college freshman music major. He applied for the university's piano program, but didn't get accepted by the specific teacher his mother wanted him to learn from. She went in person to the university, walked right into the teacher's office, who happened to also be the dean of the entire music department, to pressure him to change his mind. He said no. She proceeded to withdraw her son from all university classes and activities. My own mother, she's a narcissist. Some highlights. 1. We lived in a microscopic small town. 500 people. There was a gas station right across the street. I was not allowed to cross the street on my own until I was 14 because I may get hit by one of the 3 cars that drove past per day. 2. I wasn't allowed to ride a bike at all until I was 12, and then I had training wheels forever and couldn't leave the driveway. 3. Anything I wanted to try I was allowed to do once, and then when I inevitably failed it was I told you were going to get. Roller skating. Once. Of course I fell. She knew I wasn't coordinated enough for that. Swim lessons. 1. She knew I wasn't strong enough for that. Track. 1 practice. She knew I wasn't tall enough for that. Etc. 3. On the rare occasions I was allowed to leave the house, she went with me or would turn up. Somehow when I was 16 she let me get a job at a burger joint and sat there my entire shift. She chaperoned every single school trip. Happy ending. I turned out pretty okay. I'm a reasonably functional adult who's not afraid of everything. The only thing that hung on is sadly the belief that I'll fail at everything. Can't get rid of it. Ex's mother freaked out and left increasingly tearful messages on the answer phone every few minutes for over 2 hours because he wasn't at home to take her weekly Sunday call, and therefore something must be wrong. He was 36 at the time. If he had always been in for that call I'd have given her a little bit of leeway on the freaking out, but he was not always at home at that time and had never promised that he would be. My cousin wasn't allowed to watch Arthur on PBS. I don't even remember why, but let's be real, there's no way there's a logical reason for that. She couldn't watch most of Disney Channel because the kids are kinda snotty to their parents at times. I can agree with that analysis, but usually they learn a lesson about it, right? I watched it and wasn't a crap to my parents, haha. She couldn't listen to any secular music until she was about 15-16, and even then they were very restrictive about it. When she was an infant, her mom objected to baby pictures that showed the baby's butt or nipples. If it's a female baby, in case some pedophile somehow got his hands on it. How does that work? She had a celebrity crush on Josh Hutcherson when she was like 11-12, but apparently at some point he said something that indicated he was bisexual, and that was the end of that. And just for good measure, whenever I visited she would parent me too. I remember she forced me to take medicine when I was feeling a little under the weather, forced me to do chores I didn't normally do at home, and told me I needed to be better at dishwashing if I wanted to make a good wife someday. LMAO. Told me I worked too hard to be educated. See previous wife comment, etc. Good freaking times, LMAO. I remember the Winter Olympics one year. Told my mom I had a crush on that owner guy. Can't exactly remember his name. She beat the absolute crap out of me for expressing interest in someone who wasn't white. Freaking B. Jokes on her though. BC Miso is half Colombian. Although he looks white, so I guess that's okay for her racist butt. That thing where parents put trackers on their teen cell phones or in their cars so they can monitor every single place they go at all times. Yes, teach your teen that being under constant surveillance from authorities is good and normal, and fail to model healthy, trusting relationships by teaching them that no matter what, you cannot trust them. There are two outcomes of this, and they are both awful. 1. Your teen learns how to lie really well. Or 2. Your teen internalizes that they're untrustworthy and, as an adult, surveillance from authority figures, for example, police, government, corporate entities, is not only normal, but desirable for them to feel safe. Or 3. Your kid becomes the most boring person in the world because they don't get a chance to exercise their developing social skills. I worked with a guy who complained that his mother had misplaced an item of his while cleaning his room. He was 25. I won't specify here, but he is from a culture that's known for babying men in particular and never expecting a man to do anything around the house. My parents, especially my mom. I was back home for winter break from uni during sophomore year and hanging out at my friend's house, who lived 1 or 2 streets away. At 10 PM, my parents called and asked me to come home. Okay, fine. I didn't have a curfew, so I guess I'll go, even if I wanted to hang with my friends longer because I knew my parents wouldn't let me go out the rest of the break. Also, they refused to sleep until I came home, and I wanted them to rest for their own health. But then they freaked out because it was apparently too dark and unsafe outside, and I could not be trusted to walk the few feet to my car and drive the 1 minute home. Note that my friend and I both live in relatively wealthier, safer neighborhoods, and the streets were well lit. My parents called my friend's parents and asked them to follow me the 1 minute it took me to drive home. I had a dang parade on a 1 minute drive, and I had to inconvenience everybody in the process. Thankfully I'm attending uni in a different state and can just ignore them, but going home always sucks. If the price of living wasn't so high, my parents would have definitely moved to that state. My aunt will not let her children play outside because they might get bitten by mosquitoes. Consequently, they are 12 and 13 and don't know how to ride a bike. Ugh. I drive a school bus. At one stop, last week, one of the kids was late, but I could see him exiting his house some 200 meters away, his mom carefully closing his coat, fastening his backpack, then his slow saunter to the bus across the playground. I was holding up traffic, so I released the stop signal, closed the door and crept forward 3 car lengths to resume the flow of traffic. Then I opened my door and told him to hurry. By the time I completed my stops, some 12 minutes later, I parked at the school where I saw his mom waiting. The temperature that morning was 23 below 0 Celsius. Mom's ski coat was wide open, just a low-cut t-shirt with more cleavage than coverage showing. Pupils dilated like she had perhaps stopped at the ophthalmologist's on the way. She was cursing, screaming, and slamming the side of my bus. How dare I rush her son, and threatened to drive off. I wrote up an incident report. The school, my manager and my union steward sided with the mom. I asked them to add 3 minutes to that stop on my route sheet. So far they have not, but Helicopter Hilda gets her way now. I went to a toddler pool that was 0 entry and 1.5 feet at the deepest. This mom came in with her boy who was probably about 3 and got in the pool with him. He was wearing a wetsuit, goggles, a life vest and floaties. The poor kid could barely even splash around enough to have any fun. My kid once wore her life vest and floaties under the shower because she wanted to. Kids can be weird at that age. My best friend in college master's degree. We stayed in an apartment and that was how I got to know him and became friends. Till his undergrad, he has never strayed away from his mom's vision. Some of the things that occurred and behavior exhibited by him. 1. Cannot fold clothes, not even make an attempt. Fun fact, does not know that he wears his socks inside out at times. 2. Does not know his clothes and shoe size. His mom apparently picks clothes for him, which includes, yes you guessed it, underwear too. Saw him receive boxes from him mom during graduation which had clothes to wear for job interviews. 3. Mom selected his car, color and make and then he went and bought it. Same goes for his phone and or other electronics he has. 4. Cannot cook even if his life depended on it. We banned him from cooking anything on stove after triggering fire alarm thrice in the apartment. We all wondered how he can survive once he starts working and living alone. Yep, his mom figured that out too. She found a girl for him to marry. His wife is a stay-at-home doing cooking, cleaning, laundry etc. The thing is the guy is genuinely nice and does not have an ego. So none of the wife beating or power trip crap. His wife is also pretty cool too. He is working in a big company earning lots of money and has 2 kids now. All in all he is quite successful and him and his wife are very much happily married. Call me crazy but I smell Indian parent. Edit. If you're wondering why this is what tipped me off. Complete control of son's life. Check. Not teaching certain skills because they don't pertain to his gender. Check. Being dependent on parents into 20s. Check. Biggest one. Basically arranging a marriage for your kid and saying it is best for them. Check. I was at college orientation and a girl's mother came up to my friend and said, "See that girl? That's my daughter. Go up to her and introduce yourself and be nice to her." Frick off. Regular check-in phone calls and a GPS tracker. Poor girl doesn't even live at home anymore but is still treated like a useless child. Middle Eastern families take it further. I don't think it classifies as parenting at that point but worth a share. Had a girl in college who was exported to the US to a Christian college because it was very conservative with no co-ed dorms and strict rules. She got caught by other attending family member talking about other religions positively once. The family is classically Muslim. Next day, boom, personal eunuch. Walked from her dorm to her classes, demanding zero contact with anyone. That never ended. I am greatly certain she is now married off by the family. Woman accompanies her 18-19-year-old daughter to all of her lectures, etc. For her first 2 weeks at university. I'm a university librarian. This September during Freshers Week I was leading a workshop. I handed out a register to get the students to sign in, and a girl said that an older lady sitting a couple of people away from her was her mother. I thought she was a mature student. Thought it was odd, but carried on. A few days later I walked past them in town. The following week I was in the library talking to somebody when they both come in, spot me, and come over to ask a question. It seemed that where this student was, her mother accompanied her. I saw the student again another couple of weeks later, this time without her mother. I've never experienced anything like this before, and I've been working with students for over 15 years. I've no idea if the student was able to make any friends. My mom isn't too bad but she has her moments. I was 22 and about to start my first full-time fieldwork rotation for my master's program. She drove 5 hours to scope out the area. I thought to see if she could find closer housing, since I had a bit of a commute, and went to my fieldwork site and told them she was my mom. When I told her how ridiculous that probably made me look, she brushed it off because they'll understand your mom just loves you and wants you to be safe, or maybe they'll think I'm so incompetent my mom can't even trust me to handle a non-dangerous fieldwork assignment myself. Also she was always angry if we stayed up late because she read an article about a kid who choked on a hot dog on his 16th birthday and died because it was in the middle of the night and no one noticed. I got a haircut a couple years ago, so I was maybe 23 at the time. It was summer, so school was out. I was second in line as a kid was already waiting, so the two of us are quietly reading magazines. A boy about the same age as the first boy and his mother come in. The mother asks the first boy how old he is. He says 10. The mother asks where his parents are. He says they're at work. She then yells at him, telling him that it is illegal for children under 13 to be in public alone. The boy says that he lives nearby and his parents let him walk to the hair salon, grocery store, park, and other places that are within a block of each other. She is furious. She explains that her son is 12 and that even when he turns 13 next year, she may not let him out in public alone. I'm so thankful my friends and I were allowed to play outside alone from at least age 8. If I don't call my father every Sunday, he will call me. If I don't answer, he will text. Regardless if I reply back or not, he will send another text asking a question from my childhood. Where did we used to go fishing? Elementary school I went to. Act. He does that just in case, in his words, someone kills you and text with your phone. There's a kid in my son's former Boy Scout troop who has never been on a camping trip alone. He was elected to the OA 2 years ago, but didn't go through induction until his Asm father was also inducted. How this kid will function in college, I'll never know. I went camping and had no service. I came back to my apartment with 4 police cars around my house all searching for me. She filed a missing persons report because I didn't text her for a whole day. My local indoor play center has an area for toddlers, suggested for kids 1-3. Not enforced thankfully because the area is tiny and kids get bored of it really fast. My 2 yachts like having playing in the big kid area. There's more room to climb and explore and run. My son in particular enjoys a slide that's not meant for kids under 5. It's pretty much a vertical drop, but he loves it. Whatever, let him be a kid. So one day my kids are playing, and because of potty training I disappear for 30 seconds to take my daughter to pee. It's a quiet morning, school day. The toddler area gate is propped open so younger kids can wander in and out. I come back from the toilet and my son is screaming angrily locked in the toddler area and another mum is standing beside the gate. I say, oh, you can let him out. He probably bumped the block holding the gate open, and she says no. He's a toddler, he needs to stay in the toddler area. She apparently picked him up inside the big kid area, walked down the steps holding him, put him in the toddler area and closed the gate, then waited until I came back to berate me for letting my tiny baby play in the big kid area. Then I saw her kid, clearly school age, pale, bags under their eyes, obviously sick and should not be in a play center. So I opened the gate and let my son out, then go over to the staff and inform them that this strange woman has handled my son without my permission and that her child is sick. They booted her out and I took my kids home. This woman probably would have called the police if anyone even moved a hair on their kid. One of my buddies had this problem when he was growing up. His mom and dad divorced when he was young, and his dad found a new boyfriend. His dad had custody of my friend. We were in high school, and I remember he had to have a GPS tracker on his phone. His dad read all of his text messages and constantly looked through his phone logs. He had to be home every night by 9 PM, and had to get special permission if he wanted to stay at our houses. If he stayed at our houses, it was almost guaranteed that 11 PM would roll by, and his dad would call him furious that he didn't do some menial task. He would have to drive home and not come back that night. This happened every time we had him over. He was not allowed to have anything on the walls or floor of his room. Everything had to be spotless. We were never allowed to go to his house to stay a night. His dad tried to go to multiple interviews with him, but said friend would always tell his dad the wrong time and go without him. He was also not allowed to have a girlfriend, boyfriend of any kind. Not like any of this mattered either. This friend was heavy into underage drinking, had multiple girlfriends, and was into drugs a little in high school. Did all of that behind his dad's back, and personally I think he did many of those things just to defy his dad. My son, 14, plays club soccer, travel 4-5 times a season minus 2 seasons a year, train 3-4 days, sometimes 5 a week, plays with a kid whose dad carries his bag to and from practice. That wouldn't be too bad, but he also ties his kids' shoes, and like many of the other comments they only cheer for their kid. I make it a practice to cheer for the other kids and tell mine in private what he did right. Very odd. My mom. Even my dad was afraid of her. Honestly, it's hard to tell what's helicopter parenting and what isn't straight up child abuse. I first suspected something wasn't normal about my childhood when I was 13 and she finally let me hang out with my friends, unsupervised, after school only on the condition that she would drive around and watch us from the road. When I was 14 she spent several hours yelling at me, beating me with a broom, and filling my mouth with soap after I lied to her and she found out I was friends with someone she didn't approve of. When I was 15 and started getting acne, she believed that she could eliminate it by putting me on a special diet. No fat, no sugar, no nuts, no meat except chicken, no cheese, and a ton of other stuff I can't remember. For a year straight, I ate only rice, vegetables, and low-fat meat. Around this time she was also paranoid that I would grow up to be short and would never find a wife. So every day after school I was forced to hang onto a bar in our basement so gravity could stretch my body out. She continued to impose this diet on me for years, even after I left home and went to college, which, by the way, she didn't want me to go to. She insisted I go to a different one that was better and also closer to home. Luckily for her I realized how unhealthy it was, so whenever I wasn't home, I'd eat whatever I want. When I took my prom date out to a restaurant before prom when I was 17, she actually called the restaurant beforehand and told them to look out for me specifically and to not use any butter in my meal. As I got older, I suspect she began to sense that her reign of terror would be ending. She began disapproving of all of my friends. She tried to eliminate my social life and make her dependent on me. I had to lie to her every time I went out. She always insisted she was flawless and never made a mistake in her life or did anything wrong. After I went to college, she insisted I move back with her after I graduated and would always talk about how she hoped we could live together again after I graduated. She never accepted I moved on and she cried very dramatic tears of agony whenever I went back to college after breaks. She's dead now. Honestly, I can't say I miss her all. I really thought this said what is the worst helicopter painting you've ever seen and was wondering how 1070 people had comments to a thread like that. So CU Boulder is known for its rich Cali transplants, and after working at the dining hall and a bank nearby, I have millions of instances of insane helicopter parenting for people that are 18-25 years old. My favorite one is the rules for how you can use your dining hall bucks to let friends and were changed because students were using them all up on their friends and then couldn't eat later in the week. So parents called in bitching because clearly it's our fault that their snowflake doesn't understand basic budgeting. I love it when we don't hire a kid, and the parent comes to talk to me about how our hiring system is flawed and unfair. Yo, your kid is available one day a week and dressed like he rolled out of bed to the interview. Ooh, I've got one. My mom is a nurse at an elementary school. She has a student who is allergic to a lot of stuff, so it would be understandable if his parents were a bit cautious. His parents, however, are absolutely awful and overprotective. His mother will remove him from any activity that causes him even the slightest anxiety. They give him literally anything he wants in the world, and don't make him do anything, to the extent that he believes he doesn't have to do any schoolwork whatsoever, and tells his teachers that someone will just give him a job when the time comes. He's a 5th grader with no actual credit for the grades he's already gone through. He's been dropped by 3 therapists, because his mother makes it impossible for any therapist to get anything done with him, because he obviously has mental health issues. His mom routinely lies about the reasons the kid isn't in school, but doesn't let the kid in on the lies, so he inadvertently exposes his mother on a liar on a weekly basis. The kid is almost 11 and has very few of the skills that a kid his age should have. The school system has essentially given up on this family. The worst I've seen in my line of work, nurse practitioner in primary care, are people in their late 20s and 30s who bring their parents to appointments and or have them call my office on their behalf. These are typically male patients, but not always, with their mothers calling for them. My mother does this. I constantly remind her that I have no obligation to an appointment or agreement she made without my consent. Sure, she gets mad, but I stopped caring a long time ago. I'm 20. My college professor told us this story. So her class is huge, probably around 200 students. So as an attempt to learn some of their names, she offers extra credits to students who bring and wear Burger King crowns to class with their names written on them. So completely optional for students. Anyways, one of her students' moms called her to complain about how embarrassed her son felt for wearing a Burger King crown to school. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.